One of the reasons I believe that President Biden and Vice President Harris are pushing through this policy is that I believe they're doing this as an effort to purge from the military conservatives. Purge from the military people who don't agree with their political agenda. I think they're using it as an excuse from the enlisted level all the way up to the majors and colonels to the top brass.
That was Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and he's accusing Joe Biden of instituting a vaccine mandate on the military in order to purge conservatives from the armed forces. But Cruz doesn't seem to have a problem with the 17 other vaccines conservatives receive in order to serve. Sergeant Soundbite should have done some research first. But Cancun Cruz wasn't done. He went on to lecture the press about how the most important responsibility of Congress is to serve our military. That's an interesting read of the Constitution. Take a look.
There's no responsibility Congress has that is more important than standing up to the fighting men and women of our military. What Joe Biden and this administration are doing to our military is wrong. It is immoral.
Now, I agree with Ted Cruz. It's really important that our government stand up for the needs of America's fighting men and women. But apparently, Ted didn't feel that way back in July, when Senate Republicans worked together to block the PACT Act. That bill would have provided critical health care for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Here's Ted celebrating with his anti-vet buddies. And Ted isn't alone. Republicans are trying to bounce back from their midterm election defeats by once again trying to convince Americans that Democrats hate the military. Florida Senator and part-time bridge troll Rick Scott also weighed in to accuse Democrats of not wanting to fund the Pentagon. Watch this, and keep an eye on Rand Paul at the end.
Is there any concern that inflation and the way that it's impacted the budget could then end up with an underfunded military with this continuing resolution?
It's already. I mean, it's already happening. Look at how much the Biden administration proposed for defense spending, and look at the inflation. The Democrats don't care about defense, right? The primary purpose of the federal government is to defend the freedom of this country. The Biden administration and Democrats sit there and they don't care.
Rand Paul looks so uncomfortable because he doesn't actually believe what Rick Scott is saying. But he's willing to let Senate Republicans spin this lie in hopes that voters like you will believe it. Rand Paul, remember, has voted against multiple defense budget increases in the past, calling them big spending nightmares that are jam-packed with waste. But Rand Paul also has no principles, so here he is, ready to play along with Rick Scott's lie. In fact, let's do something Republicans really don't want to do. Let's look at the numbers. Earlier this year, the House passed a supplemental bill boosting Joe Biden's already record defense budget. Put simply, Joe Biden asked for $800 billion in defense spending. Congress said, wait, that's not enough. Let's add $37 billion more that the Pentagon didn't even ask for. And since we're talking about defense bills, remember, it was Republicans who blocked the annual defense bill last year, and they're threatening to do the exact same thing again. And under Donald Trump, Republicans actually had to work with Democrats to force Trump to pass a defense budget at all. Remember this?
Yes, it was really a huge rebuke coming from the Republican-controlled Senate. One of the reasons, as you mentioned, is that this was the first time that the Senate decided to override a presidential veto. Donald Trump had put out 8 vetoes before this one, and every time the Senate had gone along with the president, not this time.
So let's run through that again from the top. Democrats passed the largest defense budget in history, while Republicans almost left our military with nothing on their way out the door. And now those same Republicans are threatening to leave our troops high and dry again, because they still can't bring themselves to admit that vaccines work. But even some Republicans are getting sick of Ted Cruz and his gang of moody children jeopardizing national security. Here's Cruz's colleague John Cornyn sounding like someone who actually might be interested in keeping our military operational.
It seems self-evident that we need to supply our commanders, our professional military leaders, with the funding and the predictability that they need in order to prepare for the diverse threats just on the horizon. Given the threats that I've outlined around the world, America's Defense Department cannot afford for Congress to create even more obstacles for them to achieve their mission. On-time appropriations bills are absolutely critical to our national defense, and we can't expect our military leadership to operate in this sort of chaotic environment.
Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and their wrecking crew aren't interested in doing what's right for our military or advancing America's national security interest. Their eyes are fixed firmly on 2024, and they both see themselves sitting in the Oval Office. That means that for the rest of Joe Biden's term, they'll do everything possible to hobble his administration, even if it puts our military and our country at risk. The National Defense Authorization is one of the most important bills Congress passes. It has wide-ranging impacts not only on the readiness of our troops, but on our nation's ability to stay ahead of long-term strategic threats. The men and women who make up our military are watching. They can see who is trying to help and who's using them as political pawns. Republicans should remember that as they threaten to steer our nation off a cliff. If you made it to the end, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like and consider subscribing. And leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.